Hello, hello. Welcome to the Spotlight Series. You are tuned into Community Works Institute Spotlight Series on Sunday. Joe Brooks does Fridays. Zach Ritter does Sundays. We are so excited that you're here. We're so excited that Alex Banky is here as well. I'm Zach Ritter. I'm a professor and dean at Cal State Dominguez Hills. And I have amazing guests. I have the privilege to have amazing guests on the show. And this beautiful individual, well, wait, before I get there, communityworksinstitute.org, go check them out. We offer different professional development opportunities for K through 16 educators. If you're looking at EDI work or JEDI work, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, come check us out. If you're looking for ethnography and storytelling and putting a camera and a pen and a pad in your students' hands so that they can go and learn about their neighborhood through their eyes and then tell their own story through, digital mediums or through art or poetry. We try to do the real education work of drawing what's already inside the student out and into the beautiful world. So go check us out, communityworksinstitute.org, CWI. Alex Banky, our guest, I have known since I was a child at Westwood Elementary School in Los Angeles. And then we kind of went our separate ways and then came back almost like a teshuv moment at Hillel, at the Jewish Center at UCLA. And we've just been riffing off of each other for a long time. Alex Banky is an architect. He is a tennis player. He's a basketball player. He's a mensch. He's interested in spirituality, Judaism, Buddhism, traveled a lot to Brazil, knows Portuguese, knows Italian. He's a jack of all trades. And so I want him to be able to introduce himself as well. Alex, who are you?
Hi, Zach. This is such a great opportunity. I feel so honored to be here with you and Joe. This is really special. As you mentioned, I've known you since our early days at Westwood Elementary, which eventually became known as Westwood Charter. And we've always had a very strong bond. We reconnected on the tennis courts, I think in middle school. And then about 10 years ago, right after I met I now call her my wife. At the time, she was my girlfriend. We did meet back up at Hillel at the Jewish Center at UCLA, and our friendship has blossomed ever since. And I'm so grateful, really, to you and your friendship, especially to provide really interesting conversations, valued perspectives, and meaningful dialogue as it relates to diversity, culture, friendship, you name it, we talk about it.
I love it. Chavruta homies. I love it.
Chavruta homies.
So, we got K through 16 educators listening to the call or the session. Yeah. And let's start with, you and I are creative types. And
yes, we are.
K through 12 is not always a place that encourages creativity in our young people. So maybe tell us a little bit about what your K through 12 experience was like, and where did you find your kind of artistic and intellectual voice throughout that period?
Okay, this is a really good segue. I really appreciate the question. I have a very interesting trajectory. I feel in particular the most creative points in my education came probably at Westwood in the public school sector. So I started off at Westwood from kindergarten through 5th, and then after 5th grade, my parents decided to send my brother and I to a parochial school. My dad is Catholic. My mom grew up Unitarian with very, very strong cultural Jewish influences. And my mom and my parents in particular got a little nervous about the local middle school, and thought, okay, this is a great opportunity to send our kids to get a really good education. And so I actually went to Catholic school from 6th to 12th grade. And it was not for religious sakes, because my experience has always been, I grew up kind of in an agnostic, secular family that promoted more the arts and kind of scientific engagement and cultural understanding and awareness, and more, I think, kind of Jewish discovery, as well as just expansive discovery as well. And my experience from 6th to 12th grade didn't always cultivate my sense of artistic expression so much. I really felt that more so in elementary school, and then also in subsequent schools. I went to after going to procure school from 6th to 12th grade, I went to the University of Santa Cruz and received my bachelor's in language studies at Santa Cruz, just being, hanging out in the trees, hanging out, with a bunch of hippies, and then also just exploring kind of the natural creativity of the Santa Cruz Mountains. That was really, really engaged my spiritual soul and also my creative abilities.
So what was it about Westwood Elementary and or Santa Cruz? Like, who were some teachers that like really created an environment or did some interesting projects that stuck with you?
To take us into a little bit of a spiritual path, if you don't mind, I think it was as early as 1st grade, honestly, that where I started to feel kind of connected to expression. I mean, it's not just like, kind of the typical, playing with paints or drawing, but actually 1st grade was my first awareness of meditation. I had a teacher that actually started every day, our 1st grade teacher, started every day with us sitting together and meditating. And that was a really profound experience for me. I still remember the meditation. It was the same meditation every day. Basically, you close your eyes, you walk down a set of stairs. At the end, there's a door. You open the door and you go into a garden. And that was kind of my understanding of creativity. It was kind of like, it was a start. It was kind of like, okay, here's a garden. And then all of a sudden, we're immersed in this really comfortable, kind of safe, serene space. And here we can let our creativity fly, our natural essence, basically. And from there, I think it just grew. And that's, I think for me in particular, creativity and spirituality are really linked. There's a really strong quality to both of them. Even, I mean, we can talk about this later, but there are countless podcasts nowadays, but also books about the creative qualities, or how do you tap into the creative expression. A lot of it has to do with discipline, but at the same time, and kind of continual effort, but also there's like, experiences people talk about, where does the light bulb effect? It's just like this energy that comes in and then you don't know what to do with it. And then you have to just kind of funnel it through and just let it flow, as we talk about often, you and I, Zach.
Right.
So maybe, we can tap into a number of those elements, but
well, we could go. Let's go. If the train is going there, let's go there. So you did architecture school, grad school at Pratt, and tell us about that and how that unleashed some of the spiritual, artistic quality that you're talking about, or maybe it didn't. And tell us about those two paths of education and spirituality.
Yeah. So yeah, if I can just take us back to UC Santa Cruz just a little bit before, I think there was a big engagement just because of kind of the the natural tendency for people who are gravitated UC Santa Cruz as well, just kind of the student body. A lot of them are people that grew up in Northern California, come from left-leaning or just introspective individuals or introspective families, or kind of countercultural, or just kind of people that are interested in questioning, really, ultimately. I had a lot of teachers that would, hey, let's go, and talk about this on the lawn outside. We don't need to be in a classroom. Let's break up into smaller groups, and hey, wherever you want to go, go there and just sit and have a conversation. Or hey, who wants to lead class today? So a lot of just natural flow, I guess. So it's basically like, I don't know if you talk about this sometimes in pedagogical stances, but in or pedagogical areas, but this flattening of the hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically just an awareness that, okay, the teacher has a role to facilitate, absolutely, but at the same time, the facilitate recognizes that each individual in the classroom has their own role and has their own wisdom that they actually bring to the table. And it's not a conflict or a competition. It's actually equal and respected. I think that's one thing that I really felt in Santa Cruz that was actually was a really nice trajectory to my experience at Pratt, because Pratt was in the architecture. It's basically one-on-one. You get divided into studios, and basically there's an architect, a teacher, who guides you, is a guide, a mentor in the realization of an architecture project. And one of the things that I really gravitated towards Pratt Institute in particular was this notion that each semester, one of the core studio architecture project was you worked on one project the whole semester, from concept to realization. So basically and that was really powerful because it requires a lot of commitment and determination and perseverance and patience. I think in self-compassion and compassion with others, especially with the teacher and the teacher, that the teacher student relation, and some of the best professors in those studio environments were the ones where the hierarchy was flattened. Talking, I wouldn't say as equals, because there was kind of a deep respect for that individual that we had to, but at the same time it's like, hey, I want you to do the best project that you can. And I want to help guide you into actually realizing that. And that was really powerful for me. A powerful experience, unlike any educational experience I'd ever had really before. Like I said, I had bits and pieces of that at UC Santa Cruz, but really it got elevated in architecture school.
Okay, so you're talking about this equalizing of power, or a challenging of the traditional authority in the classroom. And I think that really vibes with how you show up in society, because when I walk down the street with you, you're like talking to all types of random folks on the street, and then getting their story, and then trying to give people what they need, right? You're kind of like a very generous, kind of healing type person. So, okay, do you need money? Do you need me to talk to you, make you laugh? Do you need me to make you think? Like, how can I help? And I wonder, you talked about this a little bit, about some of the buildings that you've worked on, that you want architectural spaces to be challenging the status quo and how people think about their city and their neighborhood. Tell us a little bit about that. If someone is just like, well, it's a building is a building. Tell us about how a structure can be so much more.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Frank Gehry's work.
Yeah.
I mean, as an LA designer, he speaks to my creative soul. You know, he challenges the status quo, just like you say.
Yeah.
You and I have had the privilege of walking in downtown at night or during the day, and all of a sudden we'll just come across Grand Avenue and see, hey, there's that building. Whoa, look at that. That's a work of art. That's that's
And
chutzpah.
it's chutzpah, and it transforms you in some ways, right? Because it makes you think, well, this is a piece of tinfoil. No, this is the Walt Disney Concert Hall, and it's moving, and it's undulating in unique ways, and there's a garden in the back.
Well, so that's what I wanted to talk about, is that it's not just a building, but it's a place to engage society. You can actually go into the folds of the building, explore. You can take pictures. You don't need a special bracelet. You don't need a ticket to go into the gardens. You just show up and you just see what happens.
Yeah.
And some of that is the coolest. It's like just people watch, just kind of engaging in that natural flow. And I think that was a big proponent of kind of his design ideas. And I've been to some other of his buildings, especially some of them in New York. And he always has kind of like this a way to tap into the natural, the natural area. It's like there's usually a garden or kind of a public space right in front of the building, so that people can just gather and be there and just take up space. So that it's like, yes, this building is a work of art, but it wouldn't be a building without the people who actually engage in it.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's one of the things that is really powerful to be a part of the architecture profession, is to engage in that the quality of thinking. It's a selfless quality. It's thinking, putting yourself in the shoes of the person that actually is going to inhabit your space. So it's a generous, like you said. I mean, look, thank you for the compliment. You're very kind. But it's kind of this generous quality of, you go in, and then how do you experience this building or this space or this experience.
Okay. So I like where we're going here. There's some classrooms that are in community gardens, and you're you don't have the confines of a classroom, and you can be more expansive and bring stuff out of students in new ways. I think if you're in different spaces. You worked on projects that were building religious spaces.
I did.
Right. And I think mostly Catholic and Christian spaces. And so tell us about, your interest in Judaism and Buddhism and other forms of spirituality and architecture. Like, how do those come together? Because that might inform some teachers about how they're blending some of their interests into the classroom.
So I had the opportunity, after working on a big theme park here in California, I had the opportunity to move into this other firm. And this other firm had a nonprofit and element to their practice, a nonprofit studio, and they worked on nonprofit and worship spaces. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting, because to be perfectly honest, I got a little the complexity of the theme park project was was very high, and I felt like I needed something to recenter me after that project, because just the dynamics were very intense. And I thought, okay, I want to do something that actually gives back, maybe is like a little bit more people oriented. And so this place, this firm was engaging not only in Catholic or Christian denominations, but it was trying to also engage in Jewish and Buddhist and other things. And I thought, oh, this might be cool, and I think at the core of some of those ideas is a notion of wisdom work, right? I think religion and philosophical perspectives or philosophical traditions, because Buddhism sometimes gets labeled as a philosophy or a religion, or religion philosophy. Which is it? Well, maybe it's both and not and none of it as well. And then of course there's just like anything, there's the secular or cultural elements to that as well. I think at the core of it is, for me in particular, a desire to learn about wisdom. And where does wisdom come from in the study of wisdom, and how can people tap into wisdom, and where do people look for wisdom? Well, oftentimes in culture, we look to our to religions, because that's a lot of where we find moral or ethics. So, like I said, I grew up in a kind of agnostic family, but eventually kind of found my spiritual path with Judaism, but also with a little with Zen Buddhism as well. So I'm kind of like, this and that. And I also I learned quite a bit about Catholic studies as well, and I really fall into kind of more of the spiritual kind of mystical lens of this whole experience, where I identify as a spiritual Jew. I am Jewish. However, at the same time, I also recognize that sometimes I like to ask bigger questions than are sometimes answered within just a Jewish or just a Catholic or a Buddhist sense.
Right. So now you're a teacher as a new father, right? And so, I mean, you and I go into like, well, what's the meaning of life, and are there past lives, and what is our soul saying? Is there a soul? What are we feeling? What are we thinking? Let's meditate. We do all the things. How do you convey some of that now that you're a teacher, right? You're a teacher to this young child who's very, very cute. Tell us about the teaching aspect of that, but also tell us about, what has that done for your spirituality and your growth?
I love being a father. I have an 11-month-old. He's been the biggest blessing of my life. I will say that honestly. And it's just an enormous gift. And yeah, there is a responsibility in order to teach, to share, and to listen deeply. And one thing I think we mentioned just the other day when we were going for a walk was, how do I create more space for him to inhabit his world?
Instead of kind of forcing stuff on him, the job of a teacher, I think you were saying, is to kind of create the space so that this person can grow into who they want to be.
Yeah, and I feel that a lot of Jewish wisdom is where I feel so at home with. And a lot of that wisdom is about recognizing and respecting the qualities of the soul.
Mm, mm.
That's a big part of, I think, the Jewish tradition.
So you were teaching me about Chokhmah Bina Das, which I didn't know Chokhmah Bina Das was Chabad, which is, what is
yeah.
knowledge and something equals wisdom?
So so there are, in the mystical tradition of Judaism, there's this notion that there are 10 Sephirot, which basically there's 10 divine attributes. Jewish tradition teaches that there are 10 divine attributes that, you know, if you want to say God or kind of the abstract or life, or however you want to associate with that, that knowingness, that is, there's 10 Sephirot that we can understand. They're kind of, as somebody put, it's basically like the chakra system of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, again, what the Jewish tradition teaches. And I'm just trying to give respect to what that teaches.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the notions that is this notion of like Chokmah, which means wisdom, or there's Chesed, which is kindness, and people often associate that with a loving kindness. Basically, that's a very a new age spiritual term, which encompasses, it's not just love plus kindness. It's like a deep giving of yourself fully, and a deep understanding of compassion, not only for yourself but for other people. Sometimes people in certain groups or places, certain meditations focus on the notion of putting yourself in another person's shoes. What does that actually look like, feel like, and kind of getting into the details of that, which I find is very powerful, especially with, not to get, you know, if we want to go there, we can talk about the political nature of today, but I'm just talking about, especially like, you know, how do we engage in compassionate work with people who come from diverse backgrounds as we do, and have very strong experiences that are difficult for us to understand fully. And so that's kind of one aspect of it. And I think basically I'm somebody who has been meditating for kind of close to 18 years. In one way or another, I've been focusing on that. I was taught I've taken classes, etc., but it's something, it's part of my daily practice and a spiritual.
Yeah, so tell us about that, because I feel like there have been ups and downs in your life and in your journey, and you've utilized meditation and kind of tapping into something deeper to help teach you and guide you. How has that, tell us about that?
Sure. I love meditating. It's that's what it comes down to. It's just a deep joy of tapping into your breath, tapping into a deeper sense of yourself, maybe even kind of letting go of the layers or the ideas of who you are at the core of yourself. What I find so powerful about meditation is the dislodging of our preconceived notions of who we are. And in my perspective, as I've gotten deeper in my own meditation practice, I found that I don't, at some points, I don't care what my name is. I don't care what some of these details that I've been given. It's more so I tap into a quality that is like my essence. Just some people might call it an energy quality, an energy stamp, whatever you want to say. But it's I feel like everybody has kind of a core essence to who they are. in this world, and that's something that I try to tap into. And I have, my meditation practice that helps me to do that, and then kind of releases my ego or kind of my attachment to,
So let's go right. So you're always telling me about essence, like nefesh, like
etzem. Etzem is Hebrew for essence.
Okay.
And I love that word.
Etzem. And you talk about humbling oneself, and that American culture is too egocentric. Do you feel like, and we talk about this a lot in education, of unlearning some of the toxic stuff about our kind of genocidal history is America, or our, and maybe if you went to religious school, there's a lot of dogma where it's like, okay, I don't want the dogma. I just want to know about how to love myself and others more deeply. Has it changed your how you view architecture, or how you view your life's purpose through doing this meditation?
Yeah, it's more so. It's an interesting question. The meditation, in Buddhism, they talk about the path a lot, about the way, and the way I've heard people talk about meditation is that it kind of allows you to tap into that path, to see it a little bit more clearly. I would love to know what it is in the Jewish tradition, what that is, but it's basically like kind of a light, I think in Jewish tradition, it's, you talk about, or, like a sense of light or a kind of connectivity, or, and there's this beautiful notion in Jewish tradition called echad, which is connectivity. And you can, but it's basically like that sense of kind of like, oh, okay, a deeper connection to myself and to other people and to my experience. And I think that desire to create and be a part of that dialogue in the built environment is really important for my potential for being a part of that creative architecture expression. Does that make sense?
That does. And I think you're such a dynamic person, and we have the most kind of mind expanding conversations, you and I, and with this notion of you kind of meditate so intensely that you kind of shed off these external layers, you forget your name. I think that's a powerful image. We are, in Community Works Institute, we often talk about stories and storytelling, and but also like labels, and how society puts on labels like, you're a Democrat, or you're a Republican, or you're a Jew, or you're a Catholic, or you're an architect, right? And I think something that, or I'm an educator, right? I think something that you and I have been talking about is, through the pandemic, through, luckily we've had family, we've had a roof over our head, we haven't had to have too many people in our immediate circle die and suffer, although there has been some of that. If you didn't do architecture, what would you do? Because you've talked about this connectivity between people, being maybe a rabbi, which means teacher, right? Or being a chaplain, or being someone who, I don't know, is there for people in a spiritual way, filling people's cups up. What would that look like?
It's interesting. It's a very interesting question, because I had a feeling you might ask a question like this, because you've been a very warm supporter of my, not only my just spiritual journey, but just kind of, you wanted, just trying to support me in both kind of my creative aspirations, but also you've definitely wanted to pull me out and be in the world a little bit more, rather than kind of be tucked away I don't know, just meditating. I have a funny story. Shayna and I, my wife and I, were talking, and it's like, especially during the pandemic, sometimes I would like say, geez, I just kind of want to go, go up to a mountain and just like get away and just bring my prayer shawl, or just like, just bring a blanket and just kind of meditate under the stars and just get away. And her default is, I just really want to go and just hang out in the forest, or, on a farm, and just kind of like, just be a part of that farm and just tap into that life.
Huh.
And so I think and this actually is there's another cute story, which is, there's this wonderful book, which I would encourage people who are interested in kind of the Jewish spiritual traditions, as well as kind of the Buddhist overlays, or kind of, the kind of the cross-cultural expressions of all what we're talking about. There's this wonderful book called The Jew and the Lotus, which is a story of a poet's rediscovery of his Jewish identity. And there's this funny idea that, so in the 60s and 70s, there were a lot of Jews, a lot of spiritual individuals who got really connected with Buddhism. And so, some of them, go to hang out on the top of a mountain with some monks, and they're getting really, really far into the meditative qualities, and learning about transcendent ideas and nirvana, or what people consider nirvana, and the monks, and they say, wow, I just had this amazing experience, amazing meditation. And the monk says, fantastic, that's exactly right. And a bunch of these Jewish individuals are like, well, what's next? It's like, no, and the monk says, no, this is the point. You're supposed to reach that state. And you're supposed to continue to hold on to it. And some of these people say, no, I want to go back into the world and be a part of that, and be a part of the mess. I want to, whatever. And so I think for me, this past year has been a time of kind of, I guess, a little bit of hibernation, to be perfectly honest. I've had the blessing of being able to have my son, the birth of my son, and I've had a lot of time with him, which is a really big blessing. But now it's time to kind of engage more into potential other academic or societal or social or engagement. And that's why I am so grateful for this opportunity, because I feel like this is a stepping stone to just engage more with people again, and I don't know if I answered your question. I don't think
No. You did, but it makes me think about schools and your son, and you didn't quite love going to Catholic school, right? And I think there was something about public school that shaped you and I to understand ourselves in a different light, right? Interacting with Black and brown folks and Asian folks and non-Jewish folks, and it opened our eyes up to a different world other than the West LA kind of Jewish circles that we maybe spent some significant amount of time in. Tell us a little bit about that transition, right, to Catholic school, because you felt a little bit out of place, and I'm a Jewish kid, and I'm not as wealthy as some of these other folks. And tell us a little bit about that unease.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that question, because I think there's a couple things which are important to acknowledge. In the public school system, I always felt this sense of freedom and expansiveness, because you can be somebody of mixed cultures. I have and it's not you don't have to explain it, you know, you don't have to quantify it. I have 4 grandparents or from 4 different cultures. I just found out that, you know, I had forgotten the name of the Russian shtetl that my grandparents' family came from. I have been to the Irish. I have paid respects to my Irish family that came from County Clare. I have not been to Kansas, where my maternal grandmother's from, but I would like to go there. But I have a diverse cultural and ethnic background that I think gives light to the complexity of the American experiment, or American, maybe experiment is not the right word, American landscape.
Yeah, I mean, it's an experiment that some days we do better than others, but you know, we're still trying. But
I think in those public school systems, it allows for the complexity of expression. It doesn't deny you potentially anything. It's more like,
tell us a story. Tell us a story about Westwood. What was a good memory that you had?
So many. And also at UC Santa Cruz as well. I mean, I mean, I really like playing handball. And, or just like, you know, just sitting next to, in class, sitting next to one person who was from one background, another person from another background, making friends with our close friend who was of Eritrean descent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Just the diverse, the amazing diversity that, and sometimes I think people think, oh, you know, try to quantify your diversity as well, you know, and to go back into kind of architecture a little bit, I'm reading this book, and we had this really interesting conversation with a close friend recently who says, actually, it might be possible that the human brain actually looks for diversity more so than kind of boxes. Our psychology is neuroed to look for that, and to not only accept it, but like kind of likes it, you know? And so it's a weird way of saying that. I just felt very expansive in those, and sometimes although I think the parochial school that I went to, or the 2 parochial schools I went to, were quite, you know, they tried to allow. It was more so that some of the students had very, you know, grew up with their perception of what was ethically or morally right and wrong, and they were taught that, and because, or in kind of, or the religious ideology was prescriptive to some extent, and about what is morally, or what is, you know, what is binary to some extent, you know, what is right and what is wrong, black and white.
Well, and someone did a Jewish joke and it offended you.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I was, I think it was like the first couple weeks in my experience at Catholic school, that somebody said, I don't think I ever even told anybody that I was Jewish or I had Jewish ancestry. But somebody said, Alex, you're Jewish, right? And I said, yeah, I have Jewish, you know, I am. And they said, you should cover your ears because this is not a good joke for people like you.
Mm.
And, you know,
Wow.
yeah. So after that, I mean, I think I eventually forgot about it and tried to just kind of blend in, but ultimately my diverse experience, kind of who I feel at my core, and kind of just my, my family.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't say, oh, that's just exactly what I am.
Mm.
I'm just like you in that sense. And because I just had too many questions, and a really beautiful quality, I think, of our shared tradition, the Jewish tradition, which is you ask questions and you answer them with bigger questions.
Right. You're right. There's that famous rabbi who's like, if you could have all the answers in the world, or all the questions in the world, which one would you choose? And he says, all the questions in the world, because they're more expansive, and life is not about answers, but gaining more questions as you go along on the journey. What was it like going to a school with all boys?
Yeah, I went to. No, that's an interesting thing too. I went to a high school that was an all-boys Catholic high school, and that was very. It was very interesting. I enjoyed it to
Okay.
some extent. Yeah, I actually did, because all of the kind of I enjoyed it for the first couple years, for like the first 2 years, because all of the, as a young guy, going through puberty and kind of like all the awkwardness and stuff, and kind of like the angst and all those things, and it's just like this kind of fraternity-esque thing. It's just, you're just dealing with other people, other guys, and the female situation, or the female element to that, is kind of taken out of the equation. So I didn't think about it too much. I was just kind of young, and I was just trying to fit in as much as possible, even though, like, as I've explained, my kind of diverse background I couldn't identify as like, oh, I'm just that. You know what I mean? And so, it was actually fine. The first couple of years, I felt like I was learning some really interesting things. I liked some of the people, but I still felt like an outsider. I didn't feel quite like my experience was being validated, or kind of I was being I could recognize myself in other people that I saw.
Interesting. Was there any stuff about LGBT issues, or
Yes, there were.
if you're a transgender person, which school do you go to? Was the room created for folks that didn't fit the binary?
Oh, I love that question. I think that's a wonderful question. The answer is that that type of institution doesn't allow for the complexity of that expression.
Okay.
Wow. Which I think is, it may now, but it may have ways of talking about it. But as far as I understand, Catholic religion doesn't really, doesn't accept.
Interesting.
It doesn't accept that type of expression of individuality. So, honestly, those types of institutions are going to become antiquated very, very quickly.
Right. Yeah, I got to keep up with the times. And what about wealth disparities or race differences? Growing up in middle and high school in Catholic school, how did those experiences play out for you in terms of race and class?
Yeah, it was interesting because the location of the school was actually closer to downtown Los Angeles, and closer to USC, which is a recent history is a middle to lower middle class area, and that school in particular, the Catholic school, actually catered toward the neighboring area, and had scholarships, and wanted to promote diversity. They really did, actually. I really liked that aspect of it, because it was, I mean, it was diverse. There was people from all different walks of life and expressions. Just to go back to the LGBT community aspect, that, you know, it's, I really feel, you know, it's a really important question about how do you engage that with in also spiritual dialogue, you know. You know, I think that's a really important thing. How do you include that conversation in the spiritual qualities, you know? And also, my wife and I have attended shul, or synagogue or temple, that where we have, you know, we've had rabbis that are LGBT, are part of the LGBT community, and you know, I think you know, the Catholic institution or other Christian institutions or other religious institutions would serve well, and to start engaging in that quality, because, like, again, you know, there's religion, there's spirituality, and then there's wisdom, right? And I think I mean, not to promote wisdom so much, but I think wisdom is a good thing, I think, you know. And
it's eternal, and it goes across different practices, I think. What does Judaism kind of, or different sects of Judaism, say about transgender issues or lesbian, gay, bisexual like issues? Are they open to it?
I think the Reform and Conservative movement is quite open to it. And I think I don't know about modern Orthodox, but you know, or I think some of the Haredim and Hasidic sects of ultra Orthodoxy, you know, are still confronting pretty strong, have very strong issues with that, but at the same time, I will also get kind of a random story here or there. It's like where it's not an issue, and so I get disparaged. I get different stories. I've read different stories regarding that, and also even in Israel, I've heard different stories as well.
Interesting. Yeah, because like in certain Native American cultures, there's the two-spirit notion, right? That it's both, I guess, the feminine and masculine energy can be wrapped up in one person, as we all have different expressions and spectrums of gender expression in ourselves. Is there any
also Hindu?
Really?
Hindu has an awareness of that. Also, there is a Jewish tradition from I've read of, that we are not male or female, or we're not just singularly male or female. You know, there's, you know, we have aspects of both qualities. Yeah, I've read that before.
And in the 72 names of God or the universe, there's Shekhinah, which is the female energy, and then I don't know, are there some that are multiplistic gender expressions in the 72 names?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know.
Okay.
That's a really interesting question. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the notion, you know, if you go big enough, or if you go, you know, I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, I think there's probably room for it all.
Expansive. It's expansive.
It can be very expansive.
We live in a very complicated world, geopolitically, right? We just are coming out of this Palestinian Israeli war. We're talking about issues of spirituality. But as a teacher now with your son, how are you teaching this wisdom? Because it's a very complicated world.
It's very complicated. I think not to give you a curt answer, but mindfully and carefully. I believe in the power of words and the power of intention behind your word, and to be careful with what you say, because and what does that look like? And I mean, I think one of the things that I really like about this modernist or contemporary approach to words is that speak your truth. You know, in Judaism you say emes or emet, yes, at truth. There's like, and I think it's fascinating. And so many people are speaking their truths. I mean, you see it all over all over in so many different diverse ways. And so I think that's one thing I would like to share with my son, is that to understand that you have a sense of truth as well, a deep truth within you, and that is important for you to share. And we are going to try to support that. And that means that, like, just if we're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian situation, the Israelis have their truths, the Palestinians have their truths. And it's important to listen to one another. And I want to, you know, and that's what I wanted to share with my son is that, look, and there are many different types of truths as well. I mean, we've certainly seen that. And that's one thing I want to share with him, is that, look, you know, be careful with your words and how they come across. And then also be careful with, like, my mom always says this. It's like, or my mom and dad both say this in their kind of a different way. They say, you know, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should listen twice as much as you're speaking. Or there's this famous Jimi Hendrix quote. The famous rocker. He said, "Knowledge speaks, but wisdom listens." I always resonated with that. And so I think stories help with the wisdom aspect. You know, kind of, it's basically like this notion, we were talking about this earlier, to kind of come full circle in a little way. It's like to allow my son to learn to inhabit the story in his own way, kind of create the story in the framework, and then him to allow space for him to inhabit his own, to tell his own story, or, you know, to, and I think that's a big part of this whole situation is, it's not just, I mean, we could talk about it. It's the BLM movement. We could talk about the Me Too movement. We could talk about it. A lot of different movements and stories that are coming out, and it's really important to listen. And that's something that you've definitely helped me with. And I think you continue to share. It's like, hey, I really think you need to listen to this story, because it's really Powerful, and it'll make you more compassionate and a better person to hear it. And so I'm grateful for that.
Hey, likewise, man, likewise. I know we have to wrap up, but you touched upon music, and I think music is super important for you as a teaching device. And I know Joe Brooks utilizes music and lyrics, and I do too in my class. You know, The Revolution Might Be Televised, Social Justice History through Music and Movies. And I think you can sing a song 100 times, but then maybe someone says, you know what they're saying? And they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that it was an anti-war song. I didn't know it was, you know, the Beatles' Blackbird is actually about Black civil rights. You know, I didn't know that whatever song is actually saying something much deeper. Like Marvin Gaye got away with it because he didn't have to make a super political song, and all he's saying is mother, 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 brother, 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 what's going on? And even white folks can consume that and be like, oh my God, yeah, they are killing people out here. What is going on, right? And he's just asking a question, but he's but he's hitting you here, he's hitting you in the here, and in the gut and the soul.
Right.
So what role has music played into your, I don't know, spiritual journey, but also under your educational journey?
Music was my first creative outlet.
Mm.
And so it holds a very dear place
Mm.
in my heart.
Mm.
My mom and dad are both very musical. My mom's a dancer. My dad is also a musician.
Mm.
That was his first love, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to be a professional musician, and in all intents and purposes, he is.
Mm.
And so I think music has a wonderful way. It's kind of like stories. It has its own way of telling, of sharing truths or perspectives
Mm.
that don't always come through just with words, or kind of just with somebody saying it to you.
Right.
You know, it's a little easier on the ears. You know what I mean? And I think it's also just, I mean, to talk about joy, like how people come together. I mean, music has a wonderful history for thousands of years, for millennia, to bring people together, community, through dance, through ritual. And so, that's a big aspect of the wonder of music and how it can connect people together. I think it's very nice.
Mm. So before we go, what is something you would tell K through 16 educators as advice? If you were a kid again and you're going through this whole slalom race of K through 16 education, what would you have wanted them to know to cater to a guy like you, with all your identities and all your learning needs and desires and hopes and dreams?
I would say two things. I think trust yourself, trust your intuition. I think cultivate that, trust yourself, and also continue to work on a deep level of compassion for yourself and others. Compassionate work. And because I think when we can sit well with other people's stories, and just support them, and try not to transfer or engage them in too many other ways, or with too many expectations or presuppositions, or it's just a nice way of being deeply compassionate. And you can kind of maybe gauge where they need to go, and maybe you can guide them. So guide gently, and don't suppose. I mean, with educators, it's so hard because you have like 25 different souls, okay, with all different needs and qualities that are all being there right in front of you, and they all have their own expressions and different cultural histories, right? And how they got there. But I think trusting yourself, trying your best, and tapping into the deep compassion that you have is a really important thing.
Okay. All right. Beautiful, man. Beautiful, Alex. I appreciate you for being here. If you can stay a couple minutes, we'll talk a little bit afterwards, but I'll say bye to our audience. Everybody, thank you for tuning into the Spotlight series on Sunday. I'm Zach Ritter. CommunityWorksInstitute.org is where you should go for professional development opportunities for K through 16 educators. Again, we bring the community to the classroom and the classroom to the community through storytelling and sharing experiences. So definitely check out CommunityWorksInstitute.org and come back, and check out our Friday and Sunday show. And thank you, Joe Brooks, for letting us utilize this space with CWI. And everybody have a beautiful, beautiful day. Peace.